Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Policy and Project Committee of the Athens in Motion Commission. I hope everybody is staying cool now and stayed dry this morning. This was a pretty crazy weather day. Um, share the agenda. We'll take a look at that. All right. Can everybody see my screen? I don't know why is that showing.
What is the ACC?
Oh no,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's the website. Yeah,
all right.
it's just the next tab over, I think.
Yep, there we go.
There you
Thank you. All right, so for today's agenda, on the 21st of July, we're looking at reviewing crosswalk policy. I hope everyone had a chance. Daniel sent it out a few days ago. Take a look at that. I saw we did get a comment from Mark via email. He couldn't attend. We'll look at a couple of bike ordinances from Daniel, and then have a discussion around the Athens in Motion master plan update, and look at how we're going to develop that, and look at a timing around when we need to complete that. And time permitting, we'll do some other business and review the next meeting date. So does anyone have any changes they wish to propose to the current agenda?
No changes, but and this isn't even the right committee, but I had this on my door today. So, Porch Fest.
What is it? Oh, Porch
It's
Fest. Isn't that
Porch
nice?
Fest. October 2nd.
Ooh,
So
marking the date.
that will come up when we talk about communications.
There you go.
But before I forget.
Yay.
Okay, if there's no changes proposed, can I get a motion to accept the agenda?
I will make a motion to accept the agenda.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. And Teresa. All right, then we'll move forward. Anyone want to volunteer for the minute taker?
But don't we need to take a vote on the agenda?
Oh, yeah, we should vote
Oh,
on
I'm
it.
sorry. Yep. Okay. Yeah. So, all in favor of approving the agenda for today, say aye.
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 Yay.
Any opposed? The same size, same sign. Okay. Then we can move forward with the agenda. It's approved. Okay. And then any volunteers for taking the minutes?
I will. I am
Lauren.
already doing it.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you, Lauren.
We have minutes from last meeting.
Yeah, I do have them posted. Sent them out a few days ago, asked for comments. I didn't get any comments back. We can, are there any comments?
Yeah,
Since
we should take a look at that and approve those.
Okay. Let me get that.
And one thing I haven't been doing, I've been having to follow up separately, but it'd be a lot easier for me with the minutes if once they're voted on, we make like an official PDF and then y'all could email it to me. It makes it a lot easier for me to get them uploaded. Because right now I mostly just have draft minutes and I kind of have to dig through emails a little bit.
I think we can do that for you, Daniel.
Thank you. Y'all are the best.
It's the same.
The best BAC in Athens. While you're pulling that up, I wanted to also mention that we, with the extension of the state of emergency for another 2 weeks, we're still good on virtual meetings now until August 2nd. So as it gets continued, we know at some point it will end, but I will keep you guys appraised.
Okay.
I don't necessarily want to send out every single time I get a different message, like to flood the inbox and keep y'all like on the edge of your seat with it. So
Well, I think, we just have to expect for the time being that cases are going to be rising. And then
Mhm.
maybe sometime in September, they'll start falling again.
Yeah, that sounds like the course it'll take again.
Anyway,
Yeah.
All right. I have the minutes up. We had discussed the new committee chair, myself, complete streets. Post that was it being approved, because these minutes are from May. That we would talk to the crosswalk policy in a future meeting, along with the bike ordinances. Get a couple of low-hanging fruit ones and bring them up to for discussion. Daniel brought up a couple of other items, one restriping of intersections, and a brief discussion on the Safe Streets for All grant.
Mm.
So, any comments regarding these minutes?
Nope.
Okay, if not, then I'll look for a motion to approve the minutes,
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
and a second, which I'll second them.
All right, then.
Move things along here. All right. Then all in favor of Daniel?
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say vote, but yeah. You
Okay,
got it.
yeah. So we'll all those that will approve the minutes as written, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Okay, minutes approved. I'll PDF them and ship them off to you then, Daniel.
Thank you so much.
All right, so let's move along then to the crosswalk policy review.
And I will share my screen, hopefully. All right. All right. So, I've got two documents up here. Let me know if y'all see them.
Yep.
So
All right.
is the policy updated as of 2017, or is it still 2004?
No, so the one on the left is the official policy. The one on the right is the update that was started. And I think the last time it was updated was 2019 in October, and so it never really fully went through. But this is more of a memo. So I don't think it actually updated the policy, more that it was just kind of like, hey, here's our update. But I'd like to carry it through to the rest of the. I want to get you guys to look at it because it's a few years out of date now, and what I had mentioned, I spoke with Steven. He definitely thought it was a really good idea to have you guys look at it. For the purpose of this particular policy, because it is kind of a technical one, I'd like to get comments from y'all and guidance, and then I would need to work out the specifics with traffic engineering, and then we would bring it back to y'all to review what we could/couldn't do, incorporate or couldn't incorporate. And then from there, you can make a judgment on whether you wanted to endorse our newly updated crosswalk policy, or basically say, we disagree with the way they handled it. And that way y'all kind of have the freedom to say whether or not you agree with it.
I have another question, Daniel. So
Hmm?
did the mayor and commission at some point in the past approve of a crosswalk policy?
Yes, I think the one on the left is, as far as I understand, that is the official mayor
Okay.
commission approved
Okay, so
policy.
it's guidelines, but it's not a policy per se. I mean, does it really matter?
In terms of the terminology,
Yeah.
honestly, I don't really know, but that's a good question. And I think that is something worth asking.
I mean, I guess where I'm going with this is, do we want a policy that has teeth, or do we want guidelines that people should follow unless there's a reason they can't?
My understanding is this is a policy for staff to follow, because we're the ones who say whether or not something is justified for a mid-block crossing.
Okay.
And you know, one of my concerns is I don't think there's enough incorporation of for our design paths like this. A lot of the criteria are based off of existing connections, but in a situation where maybe we're building a sidewalk and there is no current kind of public space, like I'll use okay, so a great example is I think is it Ruth Street? The Greenway, the MLK section of the Greenway. I'm gonna pull up a map real quick. When I was in the Parks Department back in the day,
Back in the day.
we had not built the Greenway section along MLK yet, but there was a connection going up to the street right here. So where Ruth Drive comes down, there's currently there are currently no sidewalks on the north side here, but I know for a fact that oh, come on. Okay. Let me try that again. There we go. I know that people run across from Ruth Drive to the Greenway because that is a very sensible thing that you would do if you're coming from these neighborhoods. But when we were putting this in and we had money to spend on bringing this up to code and making sure that it was done properly with this SPLOST project, we could not put in a mid-block crossing across here because the pedestrian count wasn't warranted. But you know, there was no connectivity. This didn't connect to anything, so of course it wasn't warranted. Now that there's a greenway there are people crossing, and so now we could go back and apply to have it as a crosswalk, but Leisure Services doesn't have operational funds to do that after the SPLOST project is closed out. So I'd like to find a way that we can incorporate plans like this into, like, you know, another example that's currently kind of ongoing is the Cherokee Road multi-use path. That design calls for a mid-block crossing, but they're not warranted according to our current standards. But there's no facilities, so of course they're not warranted.
Right. So if you build the facilities, then they'll probably be warranted. But until you build the facilities, they're not warranted. And in order to build, well, if you're going to build the facilities, you're not going to be building in the mid-block crosswalk because it's not warranted. But then when you need it, then you have to rip stuff up.
Right. And add in a new curb cut and all that kind of stuff.
Right. So
um,
so it sounds like we need to have some sort of anticipatory provision.
yeah. And so I'm curious, I think this can be a couple meetings. I don't think we're going to hammer all of this out today in 30 minutes.
Right.
Or 20 minutes. I can't remember how much we have on it, but we can go ahead and I can read you what Mark sent.
Okay.
So he said he thinks requiring at least 10 persons per hour to risk life and limb to get a mid-block crossing is excessive. The whole point is that it is dangerous to cross there. There should be a way to get one put in based on other criteria, such as your expert opinion, or the one is warranted based on what is in the corridor and how far between signals. Regarding the 300 feet consideration, I've seen people cross 10 to 15 feet from a signalized intersection, like near the Wendy's or Captain D's on Prince, repeatedly. No American will walk 100 yards a football field to get to a signalized crossing. That would be a reportable event. What do federal standards say, like NACTO? And then, is there anything about providing overhead signage directly over the roadway rather than just on the curb to alert drivers to mid-block crossings? Those seem to be more visible. So,
Yeah, I absolutely agree with his comment on the 300 feet. Whether we need to look at where bus stops are located, and their distance from intersections, or you know, not have a 300-foot requirement. But most of the crossings I see are people getting off the bus and then just jetting across the road,
Mhm.
and most times the bus stops are not near an intersection. Um, Especially on the Atlanta highway, I've seen that numerous times, which just I just waiting to have to be part of a police report sometime. It's amazing someone doesn't get run over there more often.
It's terrible.
It
So
is.
is there a way that we could sort of build into this um, the reality that's out there? People are crossing at this location. Um,
Yeah.
well,
and
and that's part of that 10 pedestrian crossings observed, right?
yeah, but I mean, if it's not a legal crossing, are they counting it?
Um,
I mean,
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's the whole point of it, is that there should be a minimum of 10 pedestrian crossings at that location.
okay, but
So
people,
out in front of the Social Security office,
yeah,
how many people are going back and forth across Prince Avenue? But I think the concern that Mark had is that um, there really needs to be a minimum of 10 crossings observed during the morning or evening peak hour. Um,
yeah, not 10
and
guinea pigs out there is what he's saying.
yeah, and it's just kind of like, and so I think what I'm hearing from Randy is that um, we should also provide considerations, like it specifically says crosswalks at school zones. So maybe we need to have crosswalks at transit stops. Like, what are the considerations for these particular amenities? You got transit stops, you got, I mean, within here, there's traffic signals, school zones, mid-block crosswalks, and non-signalized intersections.
Yeah.
Now, the only one that we're really discussing here is the mid-block crosswalks.
Right.
So,
But I mean, there should be some risk factor involved other than just the number of people crossing
yeah.
for a criteria.
And there's some other stuff too. So if there are 10 people crossing, and then we do have a consideration on no mid-block crosswalk should be located within 300 feet of a signalized intersection. That doesn't always apply, especially if it's on UGA property. You'll notice a lot more mid-blocks that repeat, because the way that this is also kind of considered is that 300 feet between mid-block crossings as well. And they don't necessarily do that on campus. So,
So
um,
this policy seems to be a car movement centered policy. Like, and it'd be nice if we could kind of get away from that.
yeah, and right here it says, in review of the literature both in Georgia and in other states, the 300-foot distance is a common threshold established by transportation professionals as the distance that is reasonable to expect a pedestrian to walk to have access at a signal. So I think what we're hearing from you guys is that that's not reasonable. And so maybe some good homework would be to find some other policies around the country that use a different um, distance. I mean, I think NACTO would be great. Um, Yeah, and then the GDOT pedestrian streetscape guide also supports the concept of having no mid-block crosswalk within 300 feet. This is also from 5 years ago, when it was first updated, 2017. So,
Yeah, so the thing is we should have these mid-block crossings where people are observed crossing.
I think we're wanting to do the opposite because they're saying that we can own like you have to see the observed crossing, and what Mark was saying was that you should be able to do it as a design consideration to promote connectivity and not just be in reaction to desire lines.
Yeah, but I mean, see, if you look, one thing that really annoys me is the way landscape planners will put all these nice little hedges and stuff to make pedestrians not take a straight line to get from, say, their car to the movie theater.
Mhm.
And you know what? Everybody just tramples the hedges. They just go in a straight line.
Well, that's why you got to use spikier hedges.
Yeah.
I mean, if we want to put up barriers like they use in New York City to keep people from crossing, I mean, that's an
I mean,
approach. But I don't
in
think
my opinion, like a spiky like yucca bush is way prettier than just a metal fence. It's also way cheaper. And so I think it's a really good idea to utilize landscape to do that. Now I agree that when they do that in these landscape zones in those giant parking lots, then it's not really done in a way. They're really trying to pack as much parking in there as possible because of the parking minimums that are required and the amount of space that that takes up. But that's a question
Abolish
of
parking minimums.
policy. Yeah.
could be a good thing.
I have a meeting with planning next week, and I am going to ask them if that is something they are working towards. So, now there's also other criteria here that lay out additional considerations. And this is more in line with, I think, what I would like to see. So raised concrete pedestrian refuge islands should be considered when the roadway is 3 lanes or more, or traffic volume exceeds 10,000 vehicles, or measured vehicle speeds are 35 miles per hour or higher, or the number of pedestrians is observed is greater than 20, or any combination of 1 to 5 criteria. And this is for raised concrete pedestrian refuge islands. So this is saying that like when you are putting in the different safety features for a mid-block crossing. The RFBs should be considered when it's 3 lanes or more, 10,000 vehicles per day, 35 miles per hour or higher. So it's all the same as the previous one, except it also adds in at all school crossings. Radar speed sign assemblies installed in the advanced school signs should be considered at schools crosswalks. And then it does talk about all crosswalks shall include the standard crosswalk signing and marking as defined in the most current MUTCD. My preference here would be like to look at NACTO to see if they talk about considerations. And so I agree, definitely MUTCD, but I'd like to also look and see what NACTO says, and maybe we could also reference that here. I also realized I'm not really taking notes, but since Lauren, I'm assuming you're writing all this down.
Yeah, I'm writing comments.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm trying to get what's discussed.
Luckily, it's recorded too. Now, I think some other things that are missing here. These are all talking about pedestrians. I'd love to see some consideration for crosswalks regarding bikes. And I'd like to see if Scott has any thoughts on that.
Anything specific about that?
Yeah, what type of considerations, how that would, like in terms of I guess it would have to link two bike networks together, right?
I'm confused. Like crosswalks, like where? Like mid-block crossing crosswalks kind of thing?
Anywhere,
Well,
right? And so I
yeah,
guess
I guess,
an
like,
example would be
anywhere.
at the Waffle House connector, at the park and ride across Oconee, Lexington. That intersection sucks for bikes.
Yeah.
When you
Yeah.
go from Firefly Trail to Greenway, and I know the Greenway said that they wanted something better, but GDOT wouldn't let them do something better. That's the story we got from Jake, and I believe it.
Thank you, G-Doc.
Yeah, like for instance, right here, categories of crosswalks. This is really for all crosswalks, signalized intersections, school zones, mid-block. So I think multi-use paths would be in a category. And then like personally, like at an intersection like that, I'd really like to see advanced interval. And I'd really like to see something in here about those traffic signals for bikes to let the bikes go first. Like especially at that type of intersection where you've got two trails coming together. If the button has been pushed, then it triggers an advanced initiative for crossing for both bikes and pedestrians. So, looks like he had to take a call, but aside from school zones, we also have, you mentioned transit stops. Maybe we include a section on off-street bike networks and pedestrian networks. Like that's Greenway, Firefly.
Mhm. When people are making these mid-block crossings, it's usually to go to some destination, right? Like the Howard Johnson's or the grocery store
Yeah, it's usually a business or
or their middle
a
school.
transit
I've
stop.
seen a lot of
Right.
middle school students crossing Gaines School Road.
Those are two different things though. So school zone crosswalks, there's that, and those are typically staffed with a crossing guard during school times.
Yeah, yeah.
But the mid-block locations, those are specific, like what you're talking about with a destination-based thing.
Mhm.
But you can have a mid-block that's also serving for a bike and pedestrian network, but
A connection that
yeah,
doesn't have a point A or a point B on either side, but just a way
but
to
I
do it.
think calling that out as separate from mid-block. So I think, because for me, that is a designed network.
Mm.
So would it make sense to have that as a new category for crosswalk, even though it is a type of mid-block crossing, it is also, it should have different considerations.
I'd
So,
be okay with that.
Sure.
um, and then we don't have any standards in here about pedestrian hybrid beacons or hawks. And they're called PHBs now, but they used to be called hawks. But I think that is something that I would like to see a consideration in here under, see, all right. I think this is where I'm also getting a little confused. There's criteria to consider installing a crosswalk. And then there's the categories.
Mhm.
And then there is, this is criteria, but really what this is, well, okay, criteria for features. So yeah, so that is the criteria there for the different ones. But then we've got criteria for features, and this is, I think that should be safety features.
Mhm.
And I think included in this, we've got raised concrete pedestrian refuge. I think we should also include one, which is kind of the zigzag approach where you have to actually have 2 sets of RRFPs. If you have 2 lanes to cross to a pedestrian refuge, and then you have to turn and walk alongside and actually make eye contact with the drivers. And then you have another button that you need to push for the other side. So that is, I don't know what that's called, but that type of consideration, like a zigzag crossing.
Mhm.
And then including PHBs as a safety feature as well. We've got RFBs, got signage and marking. Would it make sense to also include crosswalks should not be considered in these locations? Or do you think it should say, right here it says, raised concrete pedestrian refuge, traffic volume exceeds 10,000, but I think it should be a range, because if you have like 100,000 vehicles per day, then we probably shouldn't.
You shouldn't be crossing.
I don't think a raised refuge would be enough. So I don't know of any roads that do 100,000 a day, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think that we kind of need to start from scratch on this process a little bit. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff in here, but it's just like, it doesn't feel like it's helping to make good decisions at this point. Or maybe that's just me.
Well, if we get all the comments in and do a quick rewrite for clarification, because and looking at the mid blocks section number 4, it talks about they will not be installed on roadways with speed limits higher than 40 miles an hour. But then 7 talks about rural roads and that they should be installed 200 feet, signs put 200 feet prior to a mid block. But most of the rural roads are well over 40.
Right.
So it's a little confusing from that aspect. And
it is. So there have to be situations where a mid-block crossing is completely inappropriate. So we would want to have, a list of criteria, but volume, speed, that sort of thing. And then, what is appropriate is kind of the other side of that coin. And then the tools in between, what do you use? Like, what are the least bothersome to vehicles and the most bothersome to vehicles? And for the more dangerous ones, you'd want things that were more bothersome to vehicles, so they'd be more likely to notice them and less likely to kill the poor pedestrian.
Now, the other thing to consider, it's not really being talked about here, are crossings at driveways, which has come up recently. There was a cyclist that was hit by a dump truck on the Firefly Trail last week, and he's all right now. I think he had to go through surgery, and his bike was totaled. But basically, the stop signs along that trail are facing the trail users and not the vehicles. Now they are private drives, and so we can't necessarily put traffic control devices on the private drives, but I think there are some signage that we can require at those types of locations.
All right, so you
So
say, was it a driveway or an intersection?
it's a
with-
driveway.
Okay, so the person leaving or the truck entering hit the cyclist?
The truck leaving the driveway was going across, and from what I heard, they both saw each other, but neither one stopped.
Oh.
But
regardless of the stop sign,
yeah, I think the bike he was using had, it was difficult to slow down. It was,
Maybe his brakes were wet.
He may not have had brakes.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm still here. I just gotta let my dog out. Um, so, in that type of consideration, based on the MUTCD, which is the Manual for Uniform Traffic Control, it did not really feel like, it felt like the stop signs weren't really warranted.
Hmm.
So it looks like we got Cole to join us. Hey, Cole.
So in that situation where the bicycle is on the trail and the vehicles are going to come and go on that driveway, who has the right of way?
Well, the way that it is signed right now, the vehicles have the right of way. But based on what the MUTCD says, the higher speed approach and the higher volume approach should have the right of way. You take multiple things into consideration, and this is kind of a summarization of a big section. So this isn't everything, but basically, if it has higher speed and higher volume of usage, and there are also environmental factors taken into concern, like line of sight. So in this particular situation, my thought would be that the speed on the trail would be higher because you're coming up to a street and you're supposed to stop before you pull out into the street.
Mm-hmm.
So in general, those trucks are going to be going pretty slow. The other consideration is the volume, and we have some volume data on those sections, but it's not for that specific section. So like there's, further out, it might be 80 per day. Further in, it might be 20. But I also don't know how accurate that volume data is. And so, and then with that, it also says yield signs should be used wherever possible unless it's absolutely necessary for a stop sign.
Mm-hmm.
And this is important because if you have 10 stop signs in a row, as a trail user, you're probably not going to pay attention to any of them. But if one of those is actually super important, then that should be highlighted and you should know, oh, I do need to stop at this location. So that's why you want to use yield signs when it's okay for you to just go on through, but a stop sign for actual stopping.
Daniel, I had a quick question about the stop signs themselves. They're small, like almost like you shouldn't take them very seriously.
That is an acceptable size in the MUTCD for multi-use paths. So that's a pedestrian bike scale. Now, I think, are they 18 inches?
Yeah, probably.
So yeah, that's probably, I mean, it's like we don't want to see 30-inch stop signs on the trail,
Mm-hmm.
but if that's what's needed to make it seem like, hey, pay attention, then maybe that's what we need to switch to. But
So
all that to say that this is for crosswalks, but I don't know that we actually paint crosswalks across drives. So do you think that that should be a separate policy, or do you think it makes sense that we would include crosswalks and crossing criteria and wrap that whole situation into this?
I'm still trying to figure out who had the right of way in that situation.
In that situation, the truck did.
Okay, so the bicyclist was quote unquote at fault.
Yes, in the crash report, the bicyclist was at fault.
Okay, so did he not see the stop sign, or did he, or have, like
I don't know what the intent
we don't
was.
know what his issue was, but for some reason he didn't stop.
But
All I know is that he didn't stop.
Yeah, so focusing this, Daniel says that according to the NUTCD, I said that right, according to the guidelines, whichever route has more volume and higher speed, they should have the right of way. So the argument is that they should be able to keep going and that the people in the driveway should yield to them. And especially I feel like this should be the case for safety reasons, like who has the power here?
Mhm.
Person in a big truck. versus anyone on that trail.
Well, yeah, I mean, the truck hits the bicyclist. We know how that's gonna work out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't care what the cyclist was driving or wearing or their level of health,
Right.
they are vulnerable,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, Daniel, is this useful or are we going down a tangent here? I mean, I think this is kind of timely, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's very timely. And yeah, I don't want to just be the only one talking, so I definitely want to hear y'all's input on this.
Well, I feel like, that maybe there's a kind of a lack of understanding about these conflict points, where you have the trail users and then the road users. And so maybe there needs to be some clarification and, and I don't know exactly how to do it or where to do it, but, maybe the guy on the bicycle didn't feel like he had to stop or should have stopped.
I mean, I can tell you straight up, I don't stop at those stop signs.
Right.
But if I was biking there and I saw a dump truck pulling up, I would stop. But
Right.
in general,
He probably assumed the truck was gonna stop because, he'd kill him if he hit him. He probably just
Yeah.
assumed that, which was a
But-
wrong assumption.
but I think what I want to remove from these conversations in general is, that, well, why did that happen? Like, what was special about this individual? And I think it's important to look at that. But when
Mhm.
you're developing policy and standards, we really want to make the smart engineering decisions, based on safety. And we don't want to oversign everything because, well, if we get sued, then it makes it easier to say, well, this person didn't stop at the stop sign, right? If you keep it ambiguous, then what could that mean for our, litigation? Like, I don't like looking at things in that way. I think, the fact is that he didn't stop or wasn't able to stop, and the truck drove over him.
So
So
in a better world, the truck should have stopped. Truck should stop because it's a bigger vehicle.
Yeah.
And
Well, and I
because
think there's,
he's already at a stop because he's in a driveway.
well, he's not, because see, the way that I was talking to some, because I try to get like multiple opinions here, but a lot of those trucks don't stop in that area. I mean, basically they own their truck and they are in charge of the maintenance. And every time they have to slow down and stop, that wears out their brakes, especially when you're carrying a multi-ton load. And so if they have to stop at every time, even if there's no trail users coming, then that's also a problem for them. So really, like in my opinion, what it needs to be is a yield to bikes and pedestrians, or watch for bikes and pedestrians, some sort of way for the vehicle to need to stop.
Mhm.
But it's going to take a deep dive into MUCTD, and then I think it can be, what I'm getting at is it could probably be outlined in this policy, if y'all agree with
Yeah.
that.
All right.
yeah, and I think we're about 6 minutes over, so if we can
Okay.
table that one or give us some thought, everyone, and
Yeah, Daniel, what are the next steps for this? What do you need from us?
So I think what I'd like to know is, do we want to basically create a new outline for everything that we'd like to see in this, or do y'all want to, and then provide that to me, and I can fill in those engineering details with traffic engineering, and we could drag this out across like 3 meetings, and we could take the bulk of our policy projects meeting with discussing these changes, or would you rather see what we come up with? Because this is what staff has come up with, in 2017. So, like, which of those options would y'all prefer?
That's a hard question.
Yeah,
Okay, let me rephrase it.
well,
It would be helpful for me if y'all help me come up with an outline for everything that we want to talk about in this policy, and I'm curious if y'all are on board with that.
I
Well-
think that's what's needed.
Yeah, I think the discussion today was very good, and it brought a few things up that I would never have considered. And just reviewing these two documents. So what if we just digest the discussion so far and then have an agenda item next month?
Okay, I want to make sure I understand what the other option is that Daniel's presenting. So Daniel, the other thing you're
Okay.
suggesting is that you take the comments that we've said today in these two documents and come up with something that you bring back to us?
Yeah, so the other option is that I just deal with it internally. I take the conversation we had today and I work on this internally with staff, which would include Steven, Ronnie, traffic engineering. And then we'd bring that to y'all to respond to. So basically, in that sense, y'all would be like kind of more of a hands-off, like, we have issues with it. Here's our overarching things, but like, y'all take care of figuring out what all needs to be in there. And in the first option, it would be y'all wouldn't necessarily need to get into the details of like what the volume of crossing needs to be or what the AADT needs to be, but I would say that an important element would be to let's look at some other communities that are similar to us and their crosswalk policy and crossing policy. And it would require a little bit more work on y'all's part of either homework and then filling in. It wouldn't be as in depth as the complete streets policy, because in that one y'all actually went through every single word.
Mhm.
So like, yeah, the short version is first option would be y'all help create an outline of everything you'd like to see in the policy and then send that over to staff. Option 2 are summarize your notes and suggestions, and we just talk about today and next meeting maybe, and then we create that outline and policy, and then once it's all fleshed out, then bring it back to y'all.
I have a quick question. Do you know when the new MUTCD is going to be updated? I know they were taking public input on it last month, maybe 2 months ago. They don't update it very often.
No, they don't. I am not sure. Yeah, I think the latest version. Okay. So notice for proposed amendment for the 11th edition. Public comment closed May 2021. There are webinars from FHWA for those proposed amendments. So yeah, it doesn't say exactly when they're gonna release it, but
Okay.
Well, Daniel, what would work best for you?
like I said, the first option would be ideal for me, because then I can have kind of a structure to work from. Because I feel like the second option is going to be a little more like trying to negotiate with traffic engineering, with figuring out what needs to be added and what is appropriate for the policy, as well as finding, having to do all of the research for other communities and what they've done, and then summarizing all of that and then pushing that into this policy. And it would most likely be just me doing the bulk of that because, everybody has other responsibilities and duties. And policy is more in my realm versus like operations is more in traffic engineering.
Well, I'm happy to help
All right.
think this through. I mean, you know,
Lauren, what's What's your take on this?
I want to do what's easiest for Daniel. But I want to make sure
Uh-huh.
that, we have the resources to get this done. So this sounds like if we go with the first option, then we need to have some work sessions
Mhm.
and have some clear things to
Right.
come forward with. So maybe, I don't know, I mean, I'm thinking about this committee's workload, are you gonna have items that you need for us from, regarding the bike ordinances? You're pretty much handling all that. That's just,
Yeah, with the bike ordinances, I kind of want to just let y'all know that's more of an update for y'all from me.
Okay.
and I'm gonna go ahead and, spoil alert about the item further down the agenda on the master plan update. We're not gonna need 30 minutes to talk about it. It's gonna be pretty quick. We're figuring out a plan, but there's not, I don't know, I don't have anything for y'all to do right now on that. So,
Well, then sounds like we could tackle option one.
Mhm.
yeah, okay.
I don't know that we need to vote on that. I think we'll
Mhm.
just take that into consideration for the planning of the next few committee meetings.
Okay.
And then if I can assign homework, find some crosswalk policies that you like. I've never researched crosswalk policies. Cole might be a good resource for this because
Oh, man, yeah, Cole, what you
did a
doing
ton of
there?
research for
What was
the.
your course load like this fall semester? Uh, Find crosswalk policy. That's so nichey, right?
Mhm.
Okay, action item, find crosswalk policies for next meeting.
Okay, Cole, did you want to annotate or were you trying to unmute?
Oh, I was mute. I don't know what I
Okay,
just did.
it's all good. I'll switch it back to regular.
All right.
All right.
Mm.
So just to summarize what we've looked at here, we're gonna go with option one and review some for the action item for the team to for the committee to look at several other communities crosswalk policies. Kind of put Daniel, you're looking for a kind of high level outline of what we'd like to see.
Yeah,
Didn't
and
get
kind
that
of like
part.
the organization
Mhm.
of
Okay.
it, right? So like what all is covered, what are the different categories, how like, and then it could even just point towards other policies where it's like, well, in this community, under mid-block crossings, maybe there's a link to like 3 or 4 different communities that have mid-block crossings, and y'all can highlight the things that you like and why. Like I think we're at that level. We're like what you said, Teresa, let's just like set the existing ones off to the side, do it from scratch, and then I can find a way to incorporate that back in.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's just a little muddled right now, and so what we need is a kind of a model, so it's easier to make decisions about this. It's kind of a formula. Obviously there are going to be exceptions allowed for certain considerations, but
Yeah, so you would like, a framework other than what we have from 5 years ago.
Mhm.
Okay.
I think so.
So, yeah, our action item, find crosswalk policies for next meeting, high level outline categories. So we kind of do this individually and then try to come together. I mean, we could look at the policies, make some notes individually and potentially take an approach like what Cole did with the bike ordinances, with the spreadsheet. So
Mm.
we could potentially do something like that. Like
Yeah.
it mentions mid-block crossing or has, delineates between such and such. Do the Cole Scott method,
Yeah.
Okay.
come back together. Okay, and then is our goal then to have looked at all these and have them ready to talk about, just so we have one meeting to talk about that, or we'll just see how it goes?
Well, yeah, I'm thinking at this point, if, is this something that the county's working on, Daniel, or is this just a nice to have?
When you say the county,
Well,
I think you're looking at the
do you
county.
mean Daniel? It's something
Oh,
that
okay.
I've been pushing to happen,
Okay.
and I think we
All right.
need to happen,
Yeah,
especially as we get going into all of these capital projects that we're rolling out.
good point. Okay. So do we want to say in the 2 weeks, a work session to review what we've gone over? I know, well, Teresa, you're going to be gone.
I'll probably not be back yet, but
Okay.
if I am, I'll participate.
I mean,
How
we can come back, it's up to you, Randy, but we could just come back at our next meeting and talk
Okay.
about
Yeah.
this. That's probably fine.
All right, if that's good for you, Daniel, time wise, then that's what we'll do.
Yeah, let's just do the next meeting, and
Okay.
we'll that'll be perfect. Now, if y'all want to correspond and throw ideas around
Sure.
in email, I think that's totally fine and appropriate, and we'll talk about that at the next meeting. But
Yeah, maybe send emails out if you are looking at certain cities or whatever.
yeah,
Would be helpful.
I haven't quite figured out what we're supposed to do for like these types of things where it's a policy meeting where we're doing a bunch of work, and I guess we just live stream it for anyone to join, even though it's probably pretty boring. But that's what we did for Complete Streets, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, people want to see this stuff, Daniel. They're so about it.
We do have a ton of people who showed up at the urbanism nights. So
That's true.
last week or
Hmm.
last month, I think there was like 20.
Really? At the
Yeah.
one I missed?
Wow.
Yeah. It was the room was filled up, and then I realized that one of the tables was a birthday party, but like I mean, the other big table was us.
They were probably listening.
Okay, yeah, Scott's gotta run. Sorry, Scott.
See you, Scott.
All right. So if we're finished up with crosswalk there, we can move on to bike ordinances.
Yeah, so I dug through them. I want to get your feedback. My thought here was bike as a vulnerable road user is a good one to go with. I think, there is a Georgia law here. I'd like to have something in Athens-Clarke County. But like I want to explore it a little more. Then we're working on this separately already, so that's Vision Zero. I mean, this is zero biking fatality plan, but really Vision Zero is all traffic fatalities. So we're going towards that, but we don't need to work in the ordinance, especially since the resolution just got on to consent agenda. I don't think there's any ordinance that it's needed. So maybe this has already been completed. The driver must yield to bicyclist in bike lane. This could potentially be something about drivers not entering bike lanes, except for in locations where the dashed lines are. I've noticed like one spot where I always notice is Pulaski. If you're turning from Broad Street right onto Pulaski, a ton of people just ride up the entire bike lane. You can actually see where they start to get over into their actual lane because that's where the white line starts because it's been rubbed out by all the tires. So I think obviously the ideal would be that we would have those areas protected so that people don't drive over them and then they're like, oh, I'm not supposed to be here. But an ordinance might be a good spot to go. And then the prohibit stopping in a bike lane is one that we already drafted up, and I'm going to wrap that in with the rest of these. So they're
Yeah.
stopping in bike lane and then like driving, motorized vehicles driving in the bike lane. and then the vulnerable road user. And then the next one. Okay, so those are the top 3. The rest of these are, I would like to figure out if we need to actually do this. Because we're currently, our Athens in Motion Commission, and that's what this is referring to. The Athens in Motion Commission is established by resolution and not ordinance. So I'm gonna go ahead and highlight that. And this is actually, and so I guess from there, I'm kind of like, do we just start with 4 that are pretty easy? But this other one, bike routes maintained during construction, that seems like kind of important.
Mhm.
Yeah, especially like going down East Broad, that's been if they would just clean up at the end of the day,
Yeah.
that would be thrilling, because it's just stone everywhere.
Now, yeah, and something that came out since we actually reviewed this was the application for bike-friendly communities. And there are a ton of questions in here, but you know, there are, this is what my conversation with planning next week is going to be on. But basically, I'm going to go through, find all the questions regarding policies. So like, for instance, I'm not going to run through all these. This is going to just be one example. But let's do, I want to do one that's specific to biking. Okay. Has your community taken any of the following steps to increase the accessibility and equitable distribution of end-of-trip facilities, including bike parking? And then it just lists a bunch of options here. And we've got subsidies for low-income residents to access fee or subscription-based facilities. Accessibility audit conducted for end-of-trip facilities, such as identifying facilities that are inaccessible to cyclists with disabilities. There's quality audit conducted for end-of-trip facilities, which is identifying facilities most in need of upgrade. And then basic inventory conducted for end-of-trip facilities, such as identifying gaps in availability. And then any end-of-trip facility audit or inventory that includes demographic or socioeconomic overlay to identify correlations with historically underinvested areas. And then demographic or socioeconomic analysis conducted to plan for or prioritize installation of new end-of-trip facilities. So what all this is saying is like, hey, this is increasing the accessibility and equitable distribution of end-of-trip facilities, including bike parking. And so that end-of-trip facilities can include bike parking, showers, a changing room, lockers, all of those types of things. Like, and then basically this is giving us a list of things to check off of, we need to make sure we're doing this when we're doing this audit. And so, some of these are also more regarding policy, like zoning and stuff. So like up here, we've got does your community currently have any of the following land use or development policies in place that promote shorter distances between homes and destinations? And this gets into zoning and planning stuff. And so this is where my conversation is going to, we currently have mixed use zoning. We have planned unit development zoning. We've got affordable housing policy, I think, in the works, and an urban growth boundary. We have a rural area that's been established. But other things that we could do are infill development incentives, connectivity policy, form-based, design-based codes, and then transit-oriented development ordinance. And so these are all, like, it's a really good guidebook of just, here are the things that we can do. So, and then what I can do is kind of starting with this ordinance here where we talk kind of big picture, I can compare this to what they have released in their application, and then we can see where the overlap is. So, but yeah, my thought was kind of right off the bat, maybe we just go for these 4.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would really like to see something out there regarding the bike lanes and how they should be used and you know how they're protected, because that is the only safe spot or safe area for cyclists. And I still see a lot of people parking in them.
Mm-hmm. And do
It's-
you want, and delivering,
Mhm.
like everywhere delivery drivers go?
Yeah.
Do y'all want to see me add into this first batch the construction consideration?
I would, because there's a lot of construction going on and a lot of construction planned.
Mhm.
And as I say, on East Broad with the apartments and the parking deck, the bike lane has been essentially not useful. I mean, you're back out in traffic again
Mm-hmm.
for a long period of time.
Where is that?
There at Dudley, where
Oh,
they
wait,
put those new apartments up, and then there's the parking deck down near Weaver D's.
oh, at the Firefly Trailhead.
Yes.
Yeah, gotcha. I was thinking the other side, Dudley. Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're talking about. Cool. So if that sounds good to y'all, these will be kind of the first ones I try to get started on, and then I think I can get all these wrapped up into a package for an agenda item. And I don't think any of these are going to be crazy political.
I don't think so. I mean,
Yeah, I don't think so either.
it's a bike lane.
Mhm. Well, some of them get into, I think the only one potentially the people might be against, like, well, they might be against like drivers in the bike lanes, like, or like cars or something, but I don't know. That's going to be their problem. I just write the ordinance, they figure out the politics.
There you go.
Well, yeah, I mean, if the bike lanes don't work, that puts the cyclists back into traffic, which causes issues for people driving their cars. So
Mhm.
it's a huge benefit for them to have, well, for all of us, but to separate those two modes of transportation.
Is yeah, I agree. Y'all have any other thoughts on this?
Yeah, I just want to underscore how important this is based on the statistics that we got from GDOT that you sent along, Daniel, about who is actually biking in Athens-Clarke County. And we know that 57% of people biking identify as a minority, so as non-white. And I think that that's some telling statistics right there about, and it supports research that has been done by other people that injuries, accidents are most experienced by communities of color disproportionately. So we need to do something about that, and ordinances like this can help.
Sure.
Yeah, and just to put that on the screen. So this is some data I got. Can y'all read that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
You do
Zoom.
like Command or Control plus whatever it is on a Windows machine. Yes, make it big.
So I got this from GDOT. And they got it from they have a contract with Replica. They do data analytics. So I haven't looked into Replica too much, but they are using basically location-based data, and I'm assuming census boundaries and that type of demographic data to determine this information. But 1.3% is really low for a community. So 1.3% are made by biking. That's of all trips. And then 0.6% of work trips are made by biking. So those are good numbers that we want to definitely try to get up. And we do that by creating comprehensive networks that are all connected.
And safe spaces.
Exactly. Currently, estimated count of daily trips made by biking is 7,500 by about 3,800 unique individuals. So that's a little more like powerful to me than the 1.3% because that's showing number of people, like human beings.
Right.
And then 300 biking trips for work. The average bike trip distance is 3.8 miles, and the trip duration average is 20.2 minutes. Scott said that sounded pretty accurate. And this one is something to highlight. It's kind of really interesting. Average bike trip rider household income is 55,000, which initially you're like, oh, okay, like it's a bunch of rich people. But really, 31% of bike trips are made by someone in the 0 to 15,000 household income range. So it really doesn't take a lot of high salaries to offset that income average. So, I'm gonna reach back out and see if we can get a median
Yeah, that
salary.
would be better. Yeah.
And then the average bike trip rider age is 20 years, 20.2, which, as we know, is most likely college students. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't help serve them. Like they are, if college students are the number one riding demographic, then we need to help support that and make it safe.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
And then, this is another really telling thing. Currently in Athens, we have 8.7% of all residents or of all households have no vehicles. So 8.7% of Athens as a whole has no vehicles. Almost 30% of bike trips are made by riders with no vehicles. So that's showing that disparity as well, where you're really seeing, even though we have 8.7, almost 9% of households with no vehicle, 30% of the bike trips are made by those people. So that's really also showing the importance of, creating safe spaces. Then when we get into demographics of bike trip riders, 42.7% are white, 36.8 are black, 13.1 are Hispanic or Latin origin, 3.8% mixed, and 3.4 Asian. The numbers add up to like 99.7%, I think. Isn't that what you said, Lauren? But
99.8.
yeah, so I mean, you could basically, it's 43% are white and 47% are people of color. But yet the population demographics of Athens are, I think, around the 60% or more.
Isn't it? It's actually 57% would be the number.
Yeah, actually, I can just look at our application. Yeah, oh, this is just in total population, but 74,925 divided by total population. Which is 128, 671. 58%. So anyways, going down a rabbit hole, but Let's do it. Those policies. Good stuff.
All right, yeah.
Okay. Anything else from us, Daniel?
If y'all are good with me going after those 5, I will start work on that, and then we'll just plan on having a check-in to see how I'm doing.
Okay.
And
I'll
I'll
add that.
send out an email if I need assistance on any specific verbiage or anything. But I think I have enough resources right now to get going on that.
Okay. So I'll add that as a standing item on the agenda.
And that could probably just be an update towards the end.
Sure. Oh, okay.
Or if you want to update right off the bat, we could do that. I don't know what's easier.
All right. Then we'll move on to the master plan update. Lauren, what you have for us there?
Well, Daniel has been taking a first pass at it, and we're just kind of looking at it as an overview. The timeline is to have this done about a year from now. So, this isn't anything particularly urgent. Daniel and I have talked about whether we are aiming for adoption versus acceptance. The current plan was accepted, and whether there's benefits or drawbacks to either. We're also talking about, like, we need a paper copy of the plan, but Daniel has noted that there are better resources to present the information to the public, to our lawmakers, even for us. There are better tools for presenting that information. So we're kind of just getting started on that. So I think the plan is to make a first pass, and then to figure out like what we need and when we need it, and then bring it to either this committee first or the rest of the commission. So I guess it depends on, how much we want to make updating this plan something done by committee or not. Daniel, you want to add some things to that? Because you have already been going through and putting dots on things that need to be expanded or taken out.
This is the one thing that I do where I prefer to have a print copy. I think it's the kind of thing where we could go through this page by page. And I've done that with the Greenway Commission when we did the plan update. And we ended up having to meet, in some cases weekly, but every now and then we would do bi-weekly for at least 6 months straight, which is a lot.
That's a lot.
I think what would be better for me in starting out is to have individual conversations with everybody, to sit down and pour through the plan, and have each of you, in the meantime, y'all can start looking through the plan, tell me what seems out of date. I did this kind of color code. I'm missing a dot. There's supposed to be a blue dot next to expand, but it's remove, revise, expand, and keep. So does something need to be removed? Does something need to be fixed? Should we expand more on something? And this is good as is. And so to basically do that throughout the document, a great example that I can point to is this is our goals and objectives. And so with that, I'm actually reading backwards right now. So connectivity and equity, we wanted to expand those goals. More users in education, there's still a lot that we haven't accomplished there. So we feel like that would be a really good spot to kind of keep our goals as is, but focus on how we can do those goals. And then yellow is implementation, and that's more of a revision, not so much of an expansion, just in terms of like updating the data of like, what are we doing in implementation? How far are we? Are there any things that we need to change?
Mhm. What about doing the reprioritization process for all the projects?
Yeah, that'll be part of it. But I mean, the bigger question there is like, are we adding in new criteria, right?
Right.
I think yes.
Okay.
Right now, under equity, we did not include race. We included public sidewalk to road ratio, bus service area coverage, households with no vehicle, population community by public transit, percent in poverty over 65, and percent in poverty under 18. I think at the time the argument was, well, these areas, don't pay attention to race because really you want to look at these specific areas and what's highlighted with these types of criteria. But what we have found out in the last few years, and even I think the year after this was approved, and at the Trail Summit, there was a speaker who basically said that was a huge oversight, and you absolutely need to look at race and how transportation decisions of the past have affected those communities with that are highly, people of color, percentage of people of color. So, and we also have really great tool from U.S. Department of Transportation now, which actually highlights areas of disadvantaged community. There's like 6 of them, and there's disadvantage with transportation, historically disadvantaged communities. There is area of persistent poverty, and yeah, there's a few more, but these are all, they basically break down all the census tracts into these areas are a higher priority, and they are using that as the foundation of determining whether or not a federally funded project is considered equitable or not. So that could be a really great factor to add into equity as well. I think we're probably going to be discussing the criteria and the reprioritization within the grants committee, because that's the grants and data committee. And I think it makes sense that we would really look at that. But aside from that, one thing that I've noticed that seems to be missing here is early on, we basically say, here's our existing network on one page, and then here's the level of comfort for everything in Athens. Here's the accessibility grid, and here's our proposed regional network. And this is when I think of master plans, this is the map that's supposed to be showing you, and it's not in color, so I apologize, but this is supposed to be showing you like what the actual master plan is, like where these facilities are going to be, and what type of facilities they're going to be. And so they're color coded in this when it's printed in color. But the main map that's highlighted here is that tier 1, 2, and 3 map, which in reality, we don't really need to know the difference between a tier 2 or a tier 3. Like you can have a table, and if your map shows here are the projects, and here are all the tier 1 projects for bike and pedestrian and both, like just across the board. Here are all the projects and the type of facilities they are, and these are all of the ones that are tier 1. Then what you can do is within the table you can say here are the rest of the projects and the ones that fell into tier 2 and 3. And then it gets a lot less complicated.
Yeah. All right. So Daniel, to recap what you're saying, is that for now you're having conversations, and so you want to talk to the commissioners individually and get our thoughts. Is that what I heard you say?
That's what I was thinking. I wanted to see what y'all thought about that.
Yeah, I mean, I like that approach. What do
Yeah.
y'all think?
No, that's fine.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. Good.
And
Yeah.
even in the meantime, like we can look at if y'all have stuff to send me if we haven't gotten a chance to talk yet. Send it to me. I did it. I printed it black and white on purpose so that I could the red would pop out a lot more because I like to do redlining. Makes it look like the document is just bleeding. Um, but that's kind of my thought on it. And then once I have a comprehensive look at it, because I also want to explore the organization of the plan. I mean, this is done really well for the first time a document is created, but there's always kind of, you can't just necessarily update the first time a document's there, right? Like within here, it talks about here are all the plans that have been done up to now. Here's the history of how we got to here. And like all that is really important information. But I feel like that can be packaged in this historical document once the new one has been approved or adopted, whichever one it needs to be. Then the other one goes into kind of it's a legacy document, and it can be referenced in the future.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right.
But the thing I'm most excited about is the idea of almost creating what Lauren was talking about, like a digital destination. So like not just like a story map, but like basically the Athens in Motion plan would be an interactive web page with web apps, and you could dive in and explore all the different things. You could say like, you know, if you're interested in just pedestrian stuff, there could be a way for you to kind of look through and not have to read a 200-page document looking at all the appendices. But like, if you want to get into the technical standards, we could link you to those, to that appendix within the writing. And it just gets a lot easier to guide people through the choose your own adventure versus like, I mean, we still have to have a physical copy for mayor and commission and for our records really. But the digital version really allows for mayor and commission to have a better understanding of what they're going to be looking at. Because I know that they have a lot of plans that come in front of them. And I think a pretty common thing I hear is like, I'd like a little more time to read this plan. And I can't imagine having to read that many documents. If it were me, I wouldn't. So not saying that they're not, but I know myself well enough to know that. And so I'd like to create a more interactive experience that they can really understand what Athens in Motion is. And then that can also become a major like location for the commission to point people to understand what we are. What
It
it's
can
doing.
be a feature of our webpage.
It could be the web page.
Yeah.
It could be the webpage.
Yeah.
'Cause- yeah.
I know we're at time. I had two things I was going to say, and I've already forgotten one of them. But I would, something that we've seen on some documents, I think some complete streets policies is an introduction from like a city's mayor, and I'd love to get something like that from our mayor in this document. I know that we spent quite a bit of time in the beginning kind of explaining, and in some ways defending, I don't mean to say defending, but it felt like that at times, the Athens in Motion Commission plan, the master plan, and I mean, none of us made the plan, but I think that that might be useful if he is willing to do that, and if we can show him some examples, or just our existing plan has like an overview and talks about Athens, and it can say something like that, whatever the mayor wants to say. That's just an idea.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I wish I remembered the other thing, but
I think it's a great idea. I think it would really be a nice touch.
Yeah, I like that too.
yeah, I'll remember the other stuff later, right, when we sign off, I'm sure.
Okay. And is there, I guess we're finished up then with the master plan update. And so is there any other business anyone would like to bring up?
I got a new pen
Wow.
and it goes,
Fancy.
Oh, wow.
when you
Jeez.
when you open it,
Play, do not
when
play.
you open it, it like, yeah.
Wow. It's
So
very heavy metal like.
yeah, I was scrolling TikTok and I guess it was late because I ordered it without realizing package just showed up today and I was like, what is this? And I opened it and I was like, what is this? And then I saw it and I was like, what? So that's what happens to Daniel at 2 a.m. So
All right.
Well, I'm
real-
glad you have a
to go.
special pen, Daniel. That's really nice.
I also got one of these that changes color.
Oh,
nice.
Ooh,
Yeah, that was a
that's
gift.
groovy.
All right.
there
So
you go.
for
Anyway,
those of us who will be here
other than
next
pens.
week, we do have an Athens in Motion Commission full meeting on Tuesday. So I'll be
Sorry to
putting out.
miss it.
I know. Yeah, and Randy, you said you'll be a little bit late.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So
So
our,
And it's virtual.
I will be putting out a call for agenda items. So if there's anything you guys want us to discuss in your absence, please let me know. Teresa, I'm sorry I haven't responded to your suggestion about having a presence at events, but I agree with you 100% that maybe we can choose a certain number of events per year. So thanks for suggesting those. And I'm sorry I hadn't responded yet.
It's all right. You know, you got a few things going on right now.
Yeah. Yes, and I did take notes for the minutes. I think I got a little bit too detailed. I want them to be like a hybrid between Jake style and Blaine style. I might go ahead and send these along.
Send them along.
okay.
I did send the approved minutes from last meeting to you, Daniel. PDF.
Thank you.
So that's taken care of.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Lauren.
Yeah, no problem.
Awesome.
All right. So our next meeting will be August 18th. And we can follow up on the items that, well, the action items that'll be documented in the minutes. And with that, we're a few minutes over. I'll make the recommendation here. We wrap up.
All right.
So thank you everyone for your attendance and your input. It's been fantastic, and we'll see you Tuesday.
All right, thanks, Randy. Thanks,
Okay.
y'all. Bye.
Good seeing you,
Bye now.
Nicole.